Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's still a minute to 10:30, so I'm just waiting for people to join. We still have people coming in here, so give me maybe one more minute before we get started. Okay, so hi again, and welcome to this webinar on search templates. My name is Henrik Berggren. I'm a system engineer based in Stockholm, Sweden. And I guess we're just going to get right to it. We only have like half an hour, so I thought I'd try to mix a little bit of sort of theory and show you some practical examples as well. So hopefully this is useful. And if you have questions, raise your hands and so on, or I'll just try to summarize at the end if we have any outstanding questions. Right, so search templates, why should we use them in the first place? So first of all, I think they're really great when you're doing interactive tasks, when you want to sort of really work through the numbers or the logs and work more interactively than with a dashboard typically. And also, I think a major benefit for the system as such is that the search templates, they use a lot less system resources than dashboards, since a search template is really only loading the system when you click the update button down here, whereas a dashboard is constantly running in the background, loading the indexing layer with queries, with searches for all the graphs and so on in the dashboards. So they're a big resource saver as well. But there are more benefits. They're more flexible than dashboards. You can create your own filter fields where you can filter users, IP addresses, whatever you want. And then all the widgets in the search template will respond. You can also change the time range and the repo selection, which is kind of difficult to do in a dashboard. So it's more interactive, I would say. Plus, there are some other workflow benefits. I'll show you those in a few minutes. So we're going to talk a little about load and how you can save on resources in general today. But the main topic will still be the search templates. So first of all, when we talk about load, there are really two main factors that drive the load on a log point system. It's just the number of logs per second it has to process, the EPS, and also the number of searches that are going on at any point in time. So, of course, you can throw more hardware at the problem. You can also divide your solution into multiple servers. Logpoint can be deployed in a distributed fashion. You can divide it up into search sets and backends and collectors and so on, and that's all good. But I think regardless, it's really good to have, be mindful about how you apply your especially the more heavy queries, the more complex tasks in the system, and how you sort of deploy them. So for instance, it really makes sense to try to avoid those in a dashboard if you can, of course, as far as you can, try to avoid the most heavy stuff in dashboards since they are running continuously. And when it comes to alert rules, which is another main factor in this, they can also be scheduled so that they don't run continuously. So you can schedule them to run every 5, 10, or even 30 minutes. Maybe that's fine. That will save lots of load on the indexing layer again, because the queries won't be as intense. So there are various strategies you can apply here, or a combination of those. Now, again, live searches are created by users making queries. All the individual dashboard widgets are creating queries. All the search templates you execute, when you execute them, they will add queries to the indexing layer. The alert rules will run queries. If you run reports, they will also be based on queries. And also sometimes your SOAR playbooks, if you apply those, will also make some queries, depending on what their task is, right? So there will be a mix of functionalities that will be adding to these to the load, really. And when it comes to dashboard, just try to keep them as simple as possible. Just put it like that. And if you can, then put the more complex analytics into search templates. And again, schedule alert rules so that they don't run constantly. So just those three sort of housekeeping rules will get you quite far. All right. So there's also a couple of user settings that I want to just highlight, just so you're aware of them. They've been here for years, but some people, have missed them. So I just want to remind you of them. One is the called pre-compute dashboard data. This is an option in the user settings that is enabled that by default, which means that even if you're not logged in, the dashboards will still be computed in the background, so that when you log in, the dashboard will just come alive immediately. So if you're a frequent user and you use your dashboards, you should certainly keep it enabled. But if you're a more intermittent user, or maybe you don't really care about dashboards, you just want to go into the logs and search and so on, you could disable this, which means that when you're not logged in, they will not be computed. So that will also save on resources. But it will also take a minute or two for the dashboard to come alive once you log in. So there's that. But that's one way to save some extra resource. There's also one that maybe is more for your convenience, is an option called hide histogram. So let me show you how that works. So if you go into this user settings down here, let's see, I have some Zoom stuff in the way here. Go to my preferences. There is, in the user interface part here, there's an option called hide histogram. So if I just do a quick search, just to show you the difference, I'll just have to move some stuff away here. So if I take for the last, let's say 24 hours, I'll search all my repos. So just do a huge search now, just to show you how this works. So I click search. You will see this histogram building, right? So it's sorting all these logs, millions of logs probably, into these distinct time intervals in the histogram. And that takes some time. It's got a lot of work for the system. So if I instead go into here and I disable the histogram by default, like that, go back into search, and I just run the query, boom. You will feel that it's much more responsive, especially if you work with large data sets or longer time ranges. You might have seen this histogram jumping up and down. You can get rid of that. Of course, if you like the histogram, if you want it, sometimes it's really good to have it to see peaks or something starts or ends. You can always pull it down in this arrow here and take it away again. You also get more real estate on your screen for the logs. So this is my default setting. I have that hidden by default. I can always pull it out like this. That's just like an important, I think, thing to remember. Right. So when it comes to dashboards, as you may know, we provide quite a few dashboards out of the box. But we also see users, they use our dashboards as a starting point and tweak them, or they create their own dashboards, of course. And a great way to save resources, again, is if you have, let's say your Active Directory person creates one or more dashboards. Once that is done, he or she can then share those dashboards by clicking the share button. which means that you can share it with users and assign various permissions to those groups of users you've created in your LawPoint system. This means that even if you have 10 or 20 users using that AD dashboard, it will only run once in the background instead of 20 times. So you will, again, save a lot of resource by doing this. Plus, the individuals who are allowed to edit the dashboard, any of those edits will automatically be visible for the other users as well. So you will have sort of centralized management of the dashboards. So this is great. Just use it. Now, the main topic for today, the search templates. As I said, they only generate live searches when you actually execute them, when you click the update button down here. So when you do that, they will run the queries to populate the widgets. And after that, they will just stay silent until you click update again. And one way to use this is just to start it up and then maybe start adding some filters into the fields you've defined on the right-hand side here to narrow down the scope or narrow down whatever you want to look at. Maybe you also want to tweak which repos or which time range you want to look at. So for instance, if you have multiple departments, or if you're a partner who is managing many customers' systems, you could use that to just look at one specific customer, use that as a filter, or a specific department as a filter, or a specific domain. If you have multiple network domains, you can tweak this in any way you like. So in the user interface, there's a separate little icon to get to the search templates directly. And once you're in there, you will see when you click execute, it will populate like this. And again, you can use the same graphical elements as in a dashboard. They pretty much look like a dashboard, to be honest. But you have the additional benefit of these filter fields that you can define yourself. And the override possibilities. Let's see if I'm there, fiddling with the dashboard. Sorry. So these can also be organized in tabs, just like a dashboard, so you can make them more structured and well organized. And there's also a report button. So if you search something out and you see this is something I really want to have a snapshot of to put into a case file or send to someone, you can just click the report button and a snapshot will be created in the report section in LawPoint. So that's nice too. Now, when you enter something into one of these fields, that will then affect what is shown in the widgets. So here is the setup dialog for creating the input part of the search template. So here on the right-hand side, this would be the input part, right? So this is where you define it. You actually click on this little arrow up here to get to the input section. I'll show you this in the demo system in a few. So here we have a number of, here's the name of the fields. This is what is presented to the user in the list on the right: username, event ID, source address, workstation, host. And there's a default value. So you always have to have a default value. And most of the time you would use an asterisk for a wildcard. But let's say one of these fields is the domain, and the default domain in my case would be lawpoint.com. I could also have that as a default value. It can always be changed by the user later, right? So this is the display name here, the default value. And whatever goes into that field, either the default value or something that the user types, will get temporarily stored in this field here that you can give any name you want, but that gets then transferred into what we call base queries. And you can have one or more base queries for a search template. This is really just to catch the information from the user. So in this case, event ID would go in here. If I take this out again, you will see that the base query says user equals curly bracket, user, curly bracket, curly bracket. So whatever goes into this temporary field here called user will get replicated into here. And whatever goes into the event ID, this one will get replicated in here. So if I type 1102 for event ID, that will get copied into here. So it says event ID equals 1102 when I run the query later in the widget. So these base queries are going to be part of your queries in the actual widget. So this, first time you see this, it's a bit mind-boggling maybe, but once you've done it yourself once or twice, it will become super easy to do. You just need to understand how the information gets transferred. So what I do personally, I use the names here of the temporary fields. I use the same names as the low point normalized fields I expect this to be used for. Because if you look at the definition down here, user equals user, event ID equals event ID, workstation equals workstation, and so on, it makes it, at least for me, less likely to make a mistake and also even make a spelling mistake. So if you misspell maybe source address with a single D instead of two Ds, for instance, in one place, you will sort of see that easily. So that's just a recommendation. You can use any name you want for these temporary fields. But this is how you sort of copy or transfer the user information into what we call base queries. And then once you've done that, you need to create a widget, a graph of some kind. And this is where you use the base query. So the base query will sort of transfer all the user-specific data from the filter fields into the query. And then you can add whatever you want on top of that, as you can see here. So this is just to catch the user info. So that's how we transfer it. And then you just set maybe a time range for it. And once you created the widget, you then sort of define if you want it as a table or some kind of a graph, just as in a dashboard. So once this is up and running, if I now enter Mary up here in the username filter field, I will only see the user Mary represented in the graphs here. All right. And then in the template, when I see something here that I think I want to investigate, I can always click the enlarging glass to transfer me into the logs themselves. So now I can continue my investigation and continue to filter by clicking on things in the logs or clicking on any of the interesting fields here, or adding or subtracting things in the query, changing all the usual stuff you would do. But on top of that, as another benefit of the search templates, if you look at this enlargement here, you see the user equals Mary here. If you click on this little arrow next to Mary, next to the user field, you will get this pop up, which will also list all the search templates that you have that use the user field as an input field, as a user-defined input field. So you can immediately from here, I can jump into maybe the file access template to see what files has Mary been tinkering with in the last so-and-so hours or so. And from there, if you see a strange file, you can click on the enlarging glass and you get into the logs again. So you get this nice workflow where you can jump in and out between different search templates. So again, it's much more interactive than the dashboards. Right. So before we go into summary, this was kind of quick. I thought I'd jump into our demo system and just show you this a little bit more in detail. So first of all, we have the search templates icon here in the user interface. You click there, you see your search templates. So the one I just showed you, I think is this one, help desk. Let me try that. So let's get that out of the way and do something like this. So yeah, so here we can see what it would typically look like when you go in first time. It will show you everything. So here we see disabled accounts, unlocked accounts, and so on. You can also look at impossible travel in this case. If a person has been into more than 2 countries in 3 hours. So here we see all the users that have been into more than 2 countries. And we can see this guy, Nicholas, for instance. Let's say he's an important person. I can just type Nico star. So I get all the users that begin with a Nico in my result. I can see it's been in 5 countries. And I can see down here it's Japan and Netherlands, internal, of course, and Germany in 3 hours. So there's obviously something strange going on here, which might need some investigation. And then you can just click here on the enlarging glass and so on. So that's sort of how you would use a simple search template. If I go in again and click add, just to show how you can create one really simply, I just call this user logins or something, logins. I just create a super simple one. I want to have a field called user where you can enter a username if you want. The default value would be star, and the temporary field will be user in my case. And my base query, I call it user info, would be user equals curly bracket, 2 of those, and user, that will be this field here, and then 2 curly brackets again. So this is a super simple one, right? I just submit this, and we have it here. It's still going to be empty. I don't have any widgets or anything. I just have this input section defined now with the user field. So I can now create a tab. I'll just call that, again, user logins. So now I have a tab section. I now add a widget. I give it a name, user logins. The query would be my base query, which I called user underscore info, curly. And then I can add, label login, label successful, maybe in the last hour, like that, finish. So now if I click update, this will be filled with the raw logs that match my query, right? So maybe that's not what I want. I go in and edit this. I do a chart count by user. Oops, user. Try again. And now I get this histogram, and I can go in here and change it into maybe a table. So here are the users. And again, I can go back and edit and say user, comma, maybe action, comma, message. Stuff that are in Windows logs typically. Also here, I should change this to the Windows repo only here. An update. So now I see the user, the action, the message. And from here, again, I can click on Henry Ford, because I know he's a bad guy. And I get the logs. I can continue to filter and do anything I want, but also I can click on this little arrow here, right? This one. And go into help desk, the one I just showed you before. Now he is pre-populated here. So if I update, I will see that he is on this desktop that was locked. He has a number of locked incidents in the last few hours. And if I go to impossible travel, I can see it's been in 6 countries, right? So United States, Netherlands, and so on and so forth. So again, that's how you can then go back and forth between these different templates. I think it's super useful. So this was a really simple one. If I show you a last one that is maybe a little bit more, well, using more functionality, if you like. I call the Windows Event Monitoring. This is looking into Windows logs and looking at the event IDs in those logs and matching them against two different lists I have created. One list with event IDs that Microsoft recommends as being critical, and another list that they sort of categorize as important. So if I just update this, we can see that we have two critical event IDs in our logs, and they are on these hosts. And they are on these user accounts that are not part of the admins. So I'm using actually three lists. One list is critical Windows events, another one is important Windows events, and also a list called admins, where I have all the administrative accounts. So I can include or exclude them in my query. So in this case, if I show you how this is, I have my base query. I look at the event IDs that match the critical Windows events list, and I also remove the users. I have a minus user in admins, so that will be the list with administrator names. And then I just do a simple distinct count, and distinct count will give you the number of unique values of a specific field. So here we have two unique differently, but we have a lot more. You can see we have 530 events on this host, but there are only two unique critical event IDs, and they are down here, 4719 and 1102. And 1102 is one of those that you might want to keep track of. In this case, I think it's not that bad. If I click on it, it's a Exchange machine that has some problem with some cleanup. But this could also indicate that someone has tried to turn off or has turned off event logging on a server. So it's a good one to look at. So if you want, I will check. I may be able to email you these lists if you want, and the search template if you want to have them. If you just look at them over here, they're quite simple. These are the important events here. I just picked them from a Microsoft resource site, and these are the critical ones according to Microsoft. And then I just use this template to filter my stuff in here. So if I put 1102 in here, I would get I'll just get the 1102 stuff, right? So it's super quick, super easy. Any questions? I see there's something up here now. There's a Q&A. That would be nice to get the list. All right. So I'll ask my marketing colleague. She's on vacation right now. That's why I'm a bit hesitant. But I'll ask her to include that when she mails out whatever materials you will get after the event. So I'll send you both the search template and the lists, and then you would need to go to knowledge base, search templates, and import the template itself. And then you need to go to knowledge base and lists and tables and import the lists. That's all you need to do, and then it should work. All right, any other questions or thoughts? There's some more stuff in here. All right, let's say, yeah, the webinar is recorded. Yeah, it is. So it will probably get posted somewhere as well. So Gitte, my marketing colleague, should email you something after the event. But I think she's on holiday this week, so it might not happen until next week. I hope this was useful. I really recommend you to start using search templates if you haven't, because they are really, really useful, I think. How do I get the recording? that will be in the email from Gita as well. If it's posted, probably, yeah, it's a good question. We changed so much in the lately, so it's probably posted in the. Yeah, I'll have to get back to you guys on that. I'm sorry. So if you may get an email from me even. I'll try to investigate that and get back to you. Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? I guess we're right on time. It's 11 o'clock. So otherwise, I just wish you a great day and a great week. And see you soon, I hope. Take care. Bye.